Hi guys, welcome to Astro Tarot Tuesday. And yeah, I'm your a little bit late astrologer, Lori. Lothian. Oh my goodness. Stop the recording while I wait for you guys to come into the room. So today I have tarot reader Valerie Friend, who is well known for her Tea and Tarot groups on Facebook, as well as her channel on YouTube, the Tea and Tarot channel. All the links below in my description box to find her. Plus, she does have a website for her tarot business called ValerieFriend.com. And when you check her out, maybe book a reading. I think you'll really enjoy her. And I'm just going to make sure, I just had someone come in, that they're mic'd before we keep going. Just make sure you put your mic on right now since we're recording for the YouTube channel, and stay tuned because we'll then go into questions, personal questions at the end. Thanks for joining us, April. So let's go. Today's topic. Today's topic, I should introduce the topic. The topic that we're talking about is the volatility in the markets, stock market, currency market, and economy between the recording date of October 26th and the end of this calendar year. What does the astrology might say about that, but also what does the intuitive or oracular perspective have to say? Okay, welcome, Valerie, your turn.
Hi, and hi to our guests here. So I have to say, Lori, when I did my opening prayer, I built my little altar here, and I pulled a card for tonight on that topic just to get us rolling. And as I said to you before, I'm using Christy C. Rhodes, the Next World Tarot. It's Christy C. Rhodes is a Latinx queer artist, activist, extraordinary human being. You can check her out at christycroad.com, I believe. And the card I got was the Knight of Swords, and she names it the Escape Plan. And I'm really feeling, now escape plan sounds a little dramatic. I know that my partner Amy and I call it Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, and Plan E right now, because we have to have that flexibility so that we can respond quickly and, head, heart, spirit, all is one. But right now we sort of have to be ready to go big, is what I was getting. How about you? What did you start off with?
First of all, I do love the card, and now that I've seen her art, I'll be getting her deck. That's gorgeous. I love the kind of smash up contemporary vibe.
Yeah.
You know what? I think the escape plan speaks to a lot of where we're all feeling like in the collective, the archetype of that needing almost like a bailout parachute or something like that. And we're coming into the context of what in the United States, and then this affects the whole world. Things like the debt ceiling and the renegotiation of that in the U.S. Congress, and the dynamic tension between the parties is so intense. And all this really speaks to an escape plan from imminent financial peril. In the astrology of that, I'm concerned a lot by this being the U.S. Pluto return build up for next February 2022, where US, every 250 years, the Pluto gets back to where it was. And when the United States was born, Pluto was in Capricorn. In the United States birth chart, Sibley birth chart, that's the second house, which is about the economy, the money, and the wealth of the nation. And so there's kind of a death rebirth archetype playing out. And Pluto being in the second house for the United States since the 2008 recession, the subprime loan scandal, and the whole collapse around that, and then Occupy Wall Street, and then all the things that have emerged since then from that kind of disenchantment with the system to work the way it's supposed to, continually rumbling through Pluto in the second house for the United States, moving through that part of the chart. We're under that influence. And my biggest concern in the astrology has to do with some machinations with Saturn and Uranus and Mars. I'm going to not bring that up yet because I'd love to hear more about some of the tarot wisdom about this perilous situation of a market, stock market that may be overinflated because the Federal Reserve printed money, and it's basically money that is flooding the markets with money that isn't really connected to any kind of reality.
Well, I'm pulling a few cards here and then we'll get into it. See what Yes, this one. Oh. Yeah, I think it's going to take us to a new place of creativity, and we'll see that as I show you these cards. I've just pulled 3 cards. The first one is the King of Pentacles, which is the stability, the force of stability in the resource department. Now, I know we're talking about all sorts of economic vehicles that we use here, sort of going with the vehicle. But I really think that the King of Pentacles, which is called the throne of security, is asking us to get in touch with that ancient wisdom. How have we gotten through the tough times before? How did we handle it? What have we learned from our ancestors? What kind of karma is coming around this time? I mean, we've seen a lot of power over King of Pentacles energy, which is why I like Rhodes deck so well, because it really shows a closeness to the earth, mentoring, and the word I'm looking for, stewardship of the land. Being, a lot of people say that the King of Pentacles is actually married to the physical terra firma that we stand upon. And when you take that vow to the earth, you have a little more security and settlement to go back on. It's followed up, interestingly enough, by the 7 of Cups, which is total opportunity. She calls it imagination. But it's about like these new things just popping out there, being ready to embrace something different than what you've done before. And don't tell yourself, oh, I better not take that class. I better not check into that, that teacher that I've wanted to work with, because you're afraid of lack of security, because it's here. It's just going to look differently. And then the last card I have is the Knight of Wands. So we've got the Knight of Swords and the Knight of Wands, sort of like that Saturn thing going on right there, right? And I think there's going to be some trouble. I think there could be rumblings of civil unrest to the level that we haven't yet seen. Hopefully we can participate in this energy creatively, constructively, with great confidence and courage and a willingness to put ourselves out there. But I really feel like it's going to be a rough ride to our next level. But it's coming. There's nothing negative here. All 3 cards are upright. I think things will right themselves, but if we're looking at between now and the end of the year, especially around that eclipse period, I think we're really going to see some hot-headedness, some impulsiveness, some people playing heavy-handed, some people, just charging in there, not even caring if anybody's behind them or not. It's sort of the rebel with a cause, followed up by, and I'm going to put the muscle behind the cause.
Wow, and 2 knights, right? Knights go to battle, knights go to war. Even if we don't think about the esoteric meaning, I do think too. I'm going to show you guys a chart in a sec. I do think too, though, that Mars is the one who created. Mars is the correlate for the insurrection day. Okay, so when Mars entered into Taurus on January 6th, he created the insurrection energy, and Mars has been kind of traveling around the sky in such a way during the entirety of 2021 that he keeps coming into difficult relationships with Saturn. And Saturn is authority, tradition, structure, governance, lock and load the status quo. And so, things like Mars is like rebellion, protest, disagreements that, so, back when Mars went into Taurus in January, we saw Insurrection Day. And that square to Saturn and Aquarius was what we were witnessing. And then in the summer, he was in Leo and he was creating an opposition to Saturn. We saw a lot of stuff going on in the summer in the collective, besides a lot of fires, right? To do with a lot of protests and a lot of disagreements going on in the zeitgeist of the collective. And then finally, now Mars in Scorpio in great dignity in his home sign, getting ready to become visible on November 21st. Really, as a morning Mars getting reborn into visibility, really also dovetailing with an eclipse I want to show you guys on November 19th. That's a really precarious time because he's finished his three-part story of butting against authority, butting against, Saturn. And this is in many ways, including pandemic restriction and the force of the people against some of the mandates for the vaccines or masks or following the rules. Saturn would be rules, Mars would be like F the rules. And in Scorpio, he's really powerful. I mean, he's like a sorcerer, he's a magician, he's in his feminine element. And he's looking down at Saturn and Aquarius, and they're equally strong, like the two knights, right? They're both knights. And we're coming into this total butting of heads in the middle of the month between Mars and Saturn, and then later Mars and Uranus. So this will be like November 12th to the 16th, Mars and Saturn butting heads, and then Mars butting across the way, Uranus, the opposite side, on the closer to the 17th of the month. Uranus in Taurus is about currencies and markets and money. So there's a lot of tension there. I want to show you guys a chart then that it really fascinates me. And it's a US stock exchange chart, the New York Stock Exchange. Now, astrologers keep arguing about the right time. So we're not going to focus on the time. There's many different versions of that chart and many different times. So I've got one up that I like by a woman astrologer, but the idea here is don't focus on time. If you're into astrology and I show you this chart, don't get fixated on the time. My apartment is so hot and all the windows are open because I can't control the building's heat. So I'm like in a toga here. So I'm going to show you guys a chart. And you're going to look at, don't get overly worked up about the houses, because I don't know that this would be an accurate New York Stock Exchange chart. But as Valerie mentioned, the eclipse to me is a real red flag for a deep and profound stock market downturn. And this is all happening in the broader context of Mars square Saturn and the US Pluto return bearing down on us by next February for the first of what will be a year and a half of transformation. So if you have money in the markets, I'm not your financial advisor, but it's always good to have cash is king, sort of, some kind of money on the side that isn't necessarily going to downdraft. But anyway, use your own intuition. Don't trust an astrologer for your money choices. So here we have, this New York Stock Exchange, May 17th, 1792 in New York City, may or maybe not this time. This is one of the charts that's in circulation. But I really am particularly heartened and particularly alarmed by two things. I'm alarmed by the fact that the eclipse on November 19th on the malefic star Algol, who causes death, but also can bring wealth. So that's the funny part of it. Brings wealth and death. It's the eye of the Medusa in the head of the Medusa in the star of constellation where Perseus sits, and he's the guy who slayed the Medusa, and she was the Gorgon who could turn people to stone. And this is in the United States natal stock exchange, New York Stock Exchange chart. That sun at 27 Taurus is sitting on the malefic fixed star Algol. So just think about what that means for the New York Stock Exchange as well. Think about how many people jumped off buildings in 1929 because of the stock market crash. I mean, there's something very almost malefic in the birth of the chart because the sun is on a malefic star. But that eclipse, an eclipse means an eclipse. It means it eclipses something. It ends something. It takes something away. A lunar eclipse is what we're experiencing on the United States New York Stock Exchange sun on November the 19th. Now, November 19th, add or take a month before, up to 6 months after, that window of influence is flowing through the chart. So you wouldn't go, oh no, nothing happened on the 19th of November, we're all good. Not at all. You're looking at an influence range here where it ripples forward and backward in time. That's daunting to me. That's a huge red flag for a major shift in the markets. If the markets were down, I say they could turn up, but hey, they're up, so they'll turn down. They're up inflationary wise in ways that make no sense. If you're an investor and you know about price earnings ratios, you know about zombie stocks, you know about companies that are like just shells of themselves. There's the emperor's new clothes, right? Everyone wants to keep pumping the market. The people who gain from the market were the rich people.
Yeah.
And everybody else is just like following in, like almost like a Ponzi scheme. The last one in is the last one out.
Right.
So the heartening part of the markets, and if the market's correct, so will the economy. It'll all kind of ripple out because, you know, there's a false sense of irrational exuberance about the health of the market, and that usually the stock market portends that the fall of the economy, yet it's at a sink. So anyway, but the heartening piece of it to me is Jupiter stationing at 22 degrees of the sign of Aquarius, and Jupiter stations there on the 18th of October and turned direct. However, it just kind of means all of October he was sitting his bum, his big Santa Claus butt, at the 22nd degree of Aquarius, exactly on the Jupiter of the New York Stock Exchange, which in essence is a Jupiter return for the New York Stock Exchange. Jupiter, all right, in Libra, balancing the scales, the fairness, you know, the rightness, righting what's wrong, getting things out of imbalance. And this Jupiter return will tell a 12-year story about the stock exchange, and that will tell a story about the US as well. But also the good news is that Pluto of the New York Stock Exchange, which may or may not be in the 8th house, but representing transformation and rebirth and all of that stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to rephrase that. I apologize. Jupiter stationed on Pluto, but trined the natal Jupiter. Kibosh the Jupiter return. That's me at the end of a long day. Jupiter stationed on natal Pluto, right, which is powerful, blessed regeneration, blessed new beginnings through endings, resurrection, shedding the skin of the snake, metamorphic change. Okay, so this is very deep change, but Jupiter brings blessed change, blessed endings, blessed death and rebirth. So yay. That is about something going on regarding the stock exchange that's been percolating all of October as Jupiter set at 22 degrees, right on that Pluto. And really in November, just when Jupiter begins to really dig into Pluto and really vibe with Pluto in November, as he moves out of stationary or out of the 22nd degree range. And it is that, though, trine to the natal Jupiter of the US Stock Exchange, which also makes me feel that this Pluto's familiar with this Jupiter. They have a vibe, you know, they're talking in the chart of the stock exchange. They get each other, right? They're like totally down. They're brothers, right? God of Mount Olympus, God of the underworld. And so they're trying to work in a harmonious way together. So this kind of collapse, fall, regeneration, death, and rebirth is also under Jupiter's benevolent overlordship in Libra, trying to bring balance from these corrections, really. That's what they're for. Unfortunately, the way life goes, we end up in situations where corrections are necessary, and it's probably the malefic fixed star on the sun of the stock exchange squaring Pluto. This is a part of why things get so crazy, like the 1929 stock market crash. Even the 1987 bubble that popped, Black Monday. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that gets things out of control and out of proportion. Old algol on the sun. And that is in a harsh relationship to Pluto. It's like Pluto keeps spanking the sun and going, enough of that, we're going to die again and be reborn. So I do feel that it is the eclipse that's going to collapse something in the markets, in the equity markets. New York Stock Exchange is just emblematic of that. You know, I'm not doing all the charts. I could do charts for all of the exchanges. This is a very powerful, simple way to crack the code. Okay, so that's my thoughts. And I'm going to stop the share. We will take questions about this from April and Erica as well. But I do find it funny that you got the 2 nights, right? Because that makes me really, really think about what's going on in the sky.
The 2 nights, and I have to say with the 7 of Cups, although it doesn't really show as much in this version of the 7 of Cups, but when you're talking about stocks and investments and your actual cash on hand, I think the 7 of Cups is saying you really need to diversify what you're doing with your resources, your money, your property, your home, your vehicles. I think we really need to attend to a wider variety of monetary or materialistic items. The Seven of Cups offers us lots of choices, some of them good, some of them bad. Some of them will pan out, some of them will not pan out. That's why it's going to be important to have sort of a diversification. And I would suggest having like some cash in that old jacket pocket in the back of your closet, just in case, you know?
Just in case there's a good old run on the banks,
Yeah.
I also feel like it's an acute crisis, not a chronic one. And that's because I can see the sky for the United States next year, which looks so much better. Even though there's a Pluto return going on, I feel like there's almost like a deep cut, but that it heals quickly. Now, that doesn't mean though that if you're caught in the downdraft, you won't be crying. So if you do have investments that you want to take money off the table, I would suggest that. In crypto and gold and silver both crashed with the pandemic, right? All three crashed during the March dip in the market last year, in 2020, I should say, when the panic sell-off happened. So there can still be a panic sell-off in hedges like gold and silver and crypto, but they're probably going to bounce back more quickly than all of the other ones. The other thing I'd say is Pluto represents things that we mine, including crypto. And it is Jupiter that set on the New York Stock Exchange's Pluto, almost saying, Pluto, we bless you, gold, silver, lithium, things under the ground, precious metals.
Exactly.
Yeah, and crypto. So, but this story is going to come to life, I think, on the heels of some correction that is of some magnitude. And but I am more heartened by the longer story, but the short-term turbulence. I had a dream about triple witching day. I had a dream I was on the exchange floor. I had this dream in last April this year. And I saw these witches' hats piled up, and traders were trading just like you see in movies, right, in Wall Street, like on the actual trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And in the dream, these witches' hats were piled up on a chair. And I knew, because I know enough about the markets, that triple witching day there's going to be a crash, because the traders were panicking. Like they were like, oh my God, it's crashing, it's falling apart. And I saw the three other witches' hats piled up. So the next triple witching day, it's a third Friday in, is it November or December? Does anyone remember? I can grab it. It's coming. We've had triple witchings every 4 times a year. There's a triple witching Friday. A triple witching is when the options and puts all converge to like expiry dates on the same Friday at the same time. And it causes a lot of people, if you want to panic sell, that's when the panic sell-off will happen, because their options and puts have expired. Triple witching, let's see what day it is. It's always on a Venus day, goddess of money, always on a Friday. You can't make that up, right? Triple witching dates 2021. I know you can see that I really should have looked this up before, but I wasn't going to tell you guys my dream. So let's see. And I keep waiting to see that triple witching dream come to pass. I dreamt about the stock trade towers swaying and on fire and people running out of it. And then within about 3 months, the tech bubble crashed. But then within about 1.5 years, the trade towers actually fell. So these dreams sometimes can be both symbolic and literal. It's December, guys. So it's the December triple witching is 4 times a year. It's the third Friday of March, June, September, and December. So that eclipse on the 19th of November may show triple witching on the third Friday of December. And around December 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, transiting Venus will be on Pluto in the sky in Capricorn, really close to the United States, Pluto in the house of wealth. So Venus is the money goddess on a god of death. So I do think that then where we're seeing the most turbulence is literally at the tail end of the year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. But I do think that there's going to be some volatility that comes to pass. I don't like to predict negative things, and sometimes volatility is a good thing. Sometimes it's like we're fed up and we're not taking it anymore. But I really am enjoying the connections with the astrology. I'm wondering what you're thinking on the debt ceiling raising in December. What is it? December 6th.
Yeah, they pushed it to December, didn't they? Did you remember the?
Yes, I can't, I'm either thinking the 6th or the 12th, but I don't know right offhand.
Well, I'm going to do another video on cinema and the other guy and see what's going on. Maybe we'll get together and do a collaboration on that one. And it's for my channel because it really depends on two people. And the reason I knew that the United States Senate was going to win the Democrats would take the Senate, as I looked at the charts of Mitch McConnell and the two senators running in Georgia, and then they were like the linchpin for the power balance in the Senate during the last election.
Yeah.
And similarly, I think when it comes to the question of will that damn debt ceiling thing get passed with ease, we get those two Democrat holdouts and we look at their charts, and you can do the cards with me.
Oh, that would be great.
That would certainly lend itself to a huge amount of turbulence as well.
Yeah.
It's even just the uncertainty building and building and building that two people could hold so much power to basically undo the United States. It's pretty intense. I'd love to see that. They're on my to-do list. I have a book of my YouTube video schedule and what I want to do is readings on. So let's tackle that one later. I mean,
I love that.
They must raise the debt ceiling or the US defaults on its debt. And therefore that means the US dollar will just crash through the floor.
Yeah.
So now this is a very techie conversation between two people who seem to like the market story. So I'm going to finish this up with some questions from you guys in the chat box if you have any, and then we'll go to some personal attention for you. Okay, Patreons, do you have a question? If you do, pop it in the chat box about what we just talked about. Then we'll address that together, and then we'll go to some personal time without video. And you can go on the video if you don't mind being on the channel with your question, if you don't mind that your face will be all over YouTube. It's up to you. And if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and do private. April, do you have a question? Because your mic is off.
Hey, so my thing, you answered it a little bit, but you're saying it's going to be more of an acute problem from what it looks like rather than chronic. And then you're saying just now you were saying it appears it's definitely at this end of this year with, and yes, November 19th is when the lunar eclipse happens, but then you have that weeks before, weeks after a date. So all the doom and gloom, shove that aside. Are you able to say when things might like start looking a little up? Have you looked at that as far, or we're just doing into the end of the year and it looks kind of like it's yeah. I'm trying to do the positive because there's going to be an uplift here pretty soon after all this, as far as like what could happen. Is 2022 going to kind of come back up? Because then you're also saying if the United States does not raise that ceiling debt, then everything crashes. And who's to say that's maybe why everything crashes?
Well, I think I think that is pretty catastrophic in its own right, and it will be a loss of confidence globally in the United States. But when we talk about the silver lining, in my view, and why things look better, there's a lot of factors that are coming into play next year. But one of the things that I can even say just about the New York Stock Exchange, right, on its very own is, the eclipse cycle, the Taurus eclipse cycle is going to bump into Venus, and it's also a benefic planet in Taurus, and there are eclipses moving through the New York Stock Exchange's chart where Venus is. Now, you can say it's an eclipse of money if you want, but there is one eclipse next fall of 2022 that is pretty well directly opposite the Venus. But it feels contextually to the rest of the stock exchange chart, which I'm looking at now, it feels like the eclipse offers a new spark, a new flame, because it's going to activate the Vestal flame and Venus, and it's going to like almost be like someone gets a big lighter underneath something. Like, okay, you've got the tinder and the fire is ready to go, and now someone lights it. So that looks to me like, yeah, I'm talking about an acute crisis, but we may not see what we call tangible evidence of a real turnaround until the fall of 2022 onward. So yes, acute crisis in the big scheme of stock market collapses about a year out. And, we may never see the same kind of crazy ass highs. We may go into a very neutral market or a longer, slow bear market. but you know, the actual sky is falling Chicken Little feeling seems to me to be likely, you know, maybe December through to the end of next year. We have one last Saturn Uranus square in December of 2000, the tail end sometime of 2022, as well as we have Saturn Uranus square this December. Yeah, the end of December, which is a same thing, upheaval, cataclysm of things to do with Taurus, which is currencies and markets. So I can't tell you what the actual catalyst is, though. I mean, anything could happen, guys, in terms of the loss of investor confidence cascading really fast throughout the system. There's a metric in the stock market where you can check how bullish and how bearish people are, and the dip to bearish in investor sentiment will always precede the collapse of a stock market. So even while it's still frothing along with bubbles and looks all like effervescent like a good champagne, if investor sentiment is ticking to bearish, you know, you're going to have to watch out. Just Google that. That's literally like a tech analysis metric. My feeling though is that it has to correct because it's not real. It's like, it is the Emperor's New Clothes. We're running on fumes, really. The car doesn't have gas in it. And I love that you had a car, Valerie. The car has no gas.
It has no gas. And yeah. I think that it's interesting to sort of, I don't think everybody is going to suffer as much. I actually think that people with less means and, you know, lower middle class people who don't really have their assets, you know, because they don't have as many, I think they're actually going to do a little better. And I think we're going to see some community building that helps heal some of that from the middle out. I have been getting those kind of indications in my dreams since summer solstice, that there's these people who have been disempowered who are not going to be hurt by this situation. And so I think that there's an opportunity to make some real choices from, you know, sort of the middle America rising up and saying, okay, so we're going to do it this new way, and we're going to try, you know, everybody on our street sharing a snowblower instead of each of us having one in our garage. Mm-hmm. So I think there's going to be that kind of sentiment emerging throughout this. But yeah, just my 2 cents.
I agree. I feel like there's a new movement towards locality. Yes. And, you know, being a part of your local hood and whatever you want to do there to support that environment. And that to the point where at some point, I think the future could be reorienting the way we govern ourselves through more like city-state vibes, or more power to your local, you know, area than to some centralized government. I think the faith in the centralized government system even in Canada has collapsed. So we're going to start rallying around, you know, the human being can only be friends with 150 people. And that sounds like a lot, but that's the maximum you can get to as an individual with relationship with kinship groups. And that is the breaking point. Now think about how many Facebook friends I have, 7,000, 5,000, or how we're trying to like relate on a global or in an or a national scale, when in fact we can only relate to the person down the street or across the town. We can relate to the people that we can really connect with, and sure, we have digital connections. But I'm saying I think we're reordering toward creating connection in groups that we feel we're able to, as a species, managed based on our biological, physiological natures, you know. I don't think we'd see such fractious discord in the United States if people were looking at their lives with local harmony as a priority over, you know, partisan ideology.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, you're not going to kick down your neighbor's door and flame throw him if he's a Democrat or a Republican, you know, but you'll do it on the internet.
Right.
Okay, so I think that we're coming to the conclusion then. Any roundup statements, Valerie, before we take some personal questions? Anything, parting statement for the YouTube channel people?
I just think, scarcity mindset is crippling. And when there's all this sky is falling energy, I think it's really important to up your self-care and certainly your self-care around your money. And I think it's a good time at this part of the year. We're coming to the end of a fiscal year to do a little accounting work and like, what are you actually spending your money on? And is your money going where your heart is? I think it's just a little homework I like to give as we head into this because, you can sit around and feel the doom and gloom, or you can actually do a thing, which is kind of my thing. Light a candle. I think it's a great time to work with bay leaves, write your financial security intention and burn them. You could do it every day until the end of the year if you wanted to as a practice.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you do magic. I forgot. She's also a witch. So the bay leaf is something that you use for putting a negative intention to burn away, or a positive one to instill.
I would use it to instill a positive intention,
Okay.
And sometimes I get quite specific, like I want to have $500 in my art fund by the end of the year, because every time I get money in my art fund, something goes wrong with my car and then I spend it on my car. So you can write sort of my art fund and burn the candle, because I think that art is just as important as transportation in my life, like
Mhm.
it feeds me.
I like your question, what do you spend your money on that's truly, satisfying? Because, when I moved to Vancouver in July, the first thing I did in my girlfriend's place is run out and buy plants. There are no plants in the place. I'd rather spend that money on plants than anything else. It was like, I need that's something that gives me value and joy. So what a great conversation. Thank you, April, for your question. Thank you, Erica, and all that for listening. Thank you, Patreons, for being Patreons and all of that. What we're going to do is going to turn off the recording. Thank you, all you YouTube people who may have listened to this. And if you're interested in more content like this and you want to be a part of the back end personal readings, just sign up for my Patreon community below. Don't forget, you get all of Valerie's shit below too, her stuff, her website, and all her information. She's a really gifted reader. Tea and Tarot is something she does all the time on Facebook as well. So if you're there, link to find her there and get free tarot session, tea and tarot session content on a regular basis. And let's end the recording.